never look smaller than the stand that you're speaking into. Look, it is an extraordinary event for me. And if I see anyone crying, you're in trouble. Well, I'm not yet, but if you mention it, Rita, I'm calling you out. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're on tonight. I pay my respects, and I want to make it clear. We've had a bit of a tough day today in relation to the Yes campaign coming out of the prisons. I want to acknowledge that I am voting yes, and our union is going to continue. I want to acknowledge there's been so many people that have been part of this journey, and a lot of tonight has been focusing on me. And who said it, Luke or Michelle? It is a team effort. Yes, it takes leadership, but sometimes that leadership is just knowing when to shut up and listen to those that know more. I remember some of the issues that Julian has mentioned tonight, and it wasn't my decision. I acted on what were the decisions of those around me, those that understood industrial relations. I was 31. My knowledge of industrial relations was pretty minimal. I'd studied it at the University of Footscray Institute of Technology. I had a little degree in it. And I want to thank Len Cooper, who's here tonight, who was the union secretary, who came and spoke to me as a student at the class to talk about things like the nuclear power dispute and the role unions play in people's lives. I was so excited. I was going to be a union official. I was working for the Victorian Accident Rehabilitation Council, which has morphed into what WorkSafe sort of could have been. And those of you that know that Batt was abolished by Jeff Kennedy in December 1992, I was there, and I was really proud to be part of something. And I think someone else mentioned, I think it was Dan Walton last night at an event at the ACTU, where he talked about his involvement. He's a federal secretary of the AWU. He talked about his involvement in the AWU and why he became more passionate was his exposure to injured workers. Where I was at VARC, I was exposed to injured workers. And I could see a role for unions in trying to be able to ensure that health and safety was paramount. And it wasn't just about being separate to an industrial agreement, it was part of it. A bit like women in the union movement. Women's issues should not be over here and we have industrial issues here. We have to have it combined because we are all workers. How we work, the exposures we have were important. And that was part of my upbringing as well. And I really felt quite moved by Dan last night because that was his. For me, being involved in my union, which was, for those of us old enough to remember, was the Victorian Public Service Association. To my friends in South Australia, Tasmania and New South Wales, we were a PSA. We got rid of the PSA in the 1990s because of Jeff Kennett. Jeff Kennett made a decision to bankrupt us. He came after us because I was young, and that our members were not the vanguard of the revolution. They were people who had families, who were sending their kids to school, and the job meant everything. What Kennett did is an absolute aberration of any leader in this country. To cut the income, to say to somebody that you are now on a deemed individual contract. And for those in the prisons that were working at Fairley, which was the women's prison then, and Pentridge, for you to save your job when they unilaterally announced the closure, you had to sign away every one of your rights. It wasn't enough that they took our 5.2% pay rise off us, which they did by legislation, or by industrial fiat. They then decided that they would make sure that we were so corralled and the morale was so bad that people were leaving in droves. Julian mentioned the redundancies, but we had at one point 28,000 members. There were 48,000 public servants when Kennett came in. When we did a collective agreement for the first time in 9 years, in 2020, there were 20,004 people left. That was it. And we had plotted how far we had to go if Kennett had won in '99, and we would have been obliterated by 2004. There would have been no Victorian branch. It wasn't just me, it was everybody in the room that are part of the history of our union, my lawyers, our fabulous team at Morris Blackburn. It's everybody, the commissioners that have been part of it, who've held the government to account and not frightened. Many commissioners, many people in power are frightened of taking on a government when it's an employer. But at the end of the day, it is just an employer. It should have no more power than the butchers down the street, or BHP, or anybody else.
Yeah.
It is an employer. And when the employer is the legislator, it makes a very evil process when you've got someone like Jeff Kennett in charge of the legislative program. There were so many people that helped us. Many of you here today, some have passed. Julian mentioned the Democrats and the ALP getting together in the Senate. The Greens weren't there at the time. The big issue for us was someone like Senator Barney Cooney, who has passed away since. He went and spoke to Cheryl Curnow. And a few of us were in the state parliament watching Kennett prepare to hand over the powers to the Commonwealth in 1996. 96. And the discussion that was going on, clearly they were very clear that they were having a discussion with Peter Reith in the federal parliament about proclaiming one section of an act early. Peter Cordova, who is here, and I acknowledge Peter was one of the key strategists during this time. And I had to shut up and listen to it, which is, hard when you think you're the secretary. But Peter was wise, still is, but he said, I've got a phone call. I can't tell you who it's from. It's within government, and they're going to proclaim the section of the Act that will end the ability for us to get a paid rates award in Australia. So we spoke to Barney Cooney. We went up to Barney Cooney, big heavy phones, and we said, Barney, we need you to go and see Cheryl Curnow. We need you to go and talk to her because the government is going to try and proclaim one section of that Industrial Relations Act early before the 1st of January. If they do that, 7 years of fighting to get a dispute finding and an award will be lost. 9 trips to the High Court, interpreting everything, but we would have lost if Barney hadn't said, I'll do it. He went to see Cheryl. Cheryl met with him. He was there for over an hour explaining to her, what we were trying to do. Why would you cut off the right of Victorian public servants to at least have their case finished? He then rang us. He said, I've got to leave. I've just left. Peter Reith's gone in. So we went then back to Parliament. We may have had a couple of drinks in the Imperial. We're getting, towing. I think Russell Charles was there advising the minister, and he was trying to pretend he wasn't watching what was going on in this small clique down the back. We went back to Parliament, and the demeanour of Kennett and Good had changed completely. They had stopped being cocky assholes and had realised something was going on. We went back, the legislation went through the lower house, we went back to the Imperial. We got rung up by Barney and said, Cheryl will make sure that the Act is proclaimed in total on the 1st of January. We were able to get the last paid rates award. The last paid rates award in Australian history was made by a full bench with Deirdre O'Connor on the 18th of December 1996. That gave us the basis to go forward. That comes out of lateral thinking, throw around a few ideas, what should we do, how can we do it, who knows somebody, but that's the connections that tonight shows. It's all of you have contributed, I've just been the mouthpiece. The ability, I heard you, Terry Carr. The ability to articulate stuff that's ideas that have come forward, and we're not talking easy industrial relations here. Our members have to understand why we don't have a redundancy clause, or why we couldn't have categories of employment enforced, because it's a constitutional issue. Industrial relations is more than just the Act. When you're applying it to an employer that's the crown and the ride of the state, then you need to have referral, you need to have an understanding of the constitutional aspect. That's what's been a phenomenal exchange over the last 30 years. Bill Kelty said it best, Julian didn't mention this, Bill Kelty said it best when he turned up before McBean, and it was great. Like, it was one of those moments when we celebrated hard. You wonder why we were hard drinkers in the CPSU? We had very little to celebrate for 9 years. But we celebrated the victories, and this was an amazing moment. Kelty walks in. He's wearing a, Bill, if he's still here, lime green suit. He's got R.M. Williams on. He walks in, and the Industrial Relations Division of the department, which was in Treasury and Finance at the time, they sat there, and in walks Bill. Sits down with us at the bar table. They start whispering to themselves. What's Bill Kelty doing? Why is Bill Kelty here? And then Bill sits there and he goes, Jack, you can't bargain with a sovereign crown. Terminate the bargaining. McBean said, come into my chambers. Didn't invite the government in, didn't invite us in. Bill. It was terminated. That allowed us to get to the next stage. So our history has been fighting, taking a step this way, taking a step that way, but continuously moving forward on behalf of our members. Our members are some of the hardest working people in this state.
Yeah.
But as one of our delegates from State Revenue Office said a few years ago, why is it that we're always costed and never valued? And that's exactly the situation we're dealing with. We are part of the fabric of the state of Victoria. It's not a matter of just simply protecting one or two occupations. We deliver for Victoria. We help run government agendas. They should be respected, and part of what I see my role to be is to be their mouthpiece. They're gagged by the code of conduct. I'm there to be their voice. I will advocate on behalf of the Victorian Public Service for as long as they will have it. There are many of you I want to thank, but if I mention some, I forget others. So I want to say to all of you, thank you for being friends to the CPSU. Thank you for being friends of mine. And thank you for partying hard when we needed you. And thank you for just being you. It's been an honour to represent this union, and it's not a farewell speech. I'm staying around for a while, so it'll be an honour to continue to work with you.
Stay around for a bit longer. Just pass me Luke Throatsour's present. Thank you. I'll just pop this. Now the team have organised this magnificent cake, and we're going to do some cutting. There's also some champagne that's been opened, so if you've still got your glass, go over and have it topped up with a bit of bubbles, because we might have a toast as well. So do that now. And if I could get Peter Keogh, Kelvin Goodall, Peter Lillywhite to top your glass up and come forward, then we might get a group photo as well.
Yes, okay.